Wei Yuan once privately mentioned to me that Song Qing had said, Su Qian was an extraordinary alchemy prodigy, but at the time, I didn't pay much attention. After all, Song Qing was the top alchemist in the Directorate of Celestial Observation, Nangong Qianro, the adopted daughter of the director. When did the directorate get someone surnamed Su? Wei Yuan smiled. Go upstairs and see for yourself. The clever white-robed alchemists answered his questions using Su Qian's own words. The essence of alchemy is equivalent exchange, extracting the essence from materials, turning waste into treasure. Other alchemists, based on their own experience, offered answers too. Song Qing and sighed. The white-robed alchemists grew uneasy. What does Senior Brother Song mean by this? Just then, Su Qian clapped his hands. Everyone immediately, all eyes turned to this prodigy of alchemy. Su Qian met the fiery gazes, surveying the entire Xixianjian. In the realm of alchemy, only Senior Brother Song has earned my admiration, a master I deem worthy of rivalry. Senior Brother Song's meaning, Su Qian continued, is that all of you are correct, but incomplete. Thus, none are truly right. Originally, Su Qian sighed, I promised Senior Brother Song Qing to share but a single lesson with you. Yet he insists I repay my debt with interest, so I'll delve deeper, broader, and clearer. As his words faded, the white-robed alchemist's eyes blazed with fervor. The rising clamor reached Huiqing and Wei Yuan, who had just ascended to the 7th floor. That's all. They halted their steps, hesitating to enter at once. Yet their faces mirrored the same recognition. It's really him. Yang Yan studied Su Qian silently, so everything Zhang Luzhong said was true. He resolved inwardly. This copper gong must remain within his jurisdiction. No one shall take him away. Su Qian declared, the essence of alchemy is equivalent exchange, the foundational principle of spiritual exchange. But this principle isn't absolute. Only a master alchemist like Senior Brother Song Qing can grasp the true meaning of these words. When outsiders speak of alchemy, they think only of elixirs and potions. Those slightly wiser fixate on metals. But these are merely two. I classify them as the medical field and the material field. Most alchemists confine themselves to these two fields. Occasionally, they dabble in others, but only Senior Brother Song Qing has set his sights on an entirely separate domain. Song Qing's eyes lit up, as if he had found a kindred spirit. Is he about to delve into his research on biological grafting? Perhaps this lecture would mark a pivotal step into a new frontier of alchemy. Senior Brother Song Qing's research focuses on the biological field. Alchemy isn't limited to inanimate objects. It extends to living beings as well. A white-robed alchemist interjected. Young Master Su, our mentor once said, that life lies beyond the scope of alchemy. Su Qian replied, that's because Senior Brother Song Qing's methods were flawed, which is why the supervisor criticized him. But his direction isn't wrong. We extract metals from ores, and from metals, we derive even stronger alloys. We refine elixirs from medicinal herbs, yet we cannot extract potions from metals, nor can we refine metals from herbs. Why is that? A white-robed alchemist retorted proudly, herbs are herbs, and ores are ores. Young Master Su, your question is quite peculiar. If we could extract metals from herbs, couldn't we also extract gold from plain rice? But Song Qing stood frozen, then urged breathlessly, go on, speak further. The white-robed alchemists stared in disbelief. They rarely saw Senior Brother Song like this, and they realized Su Qian's words held truly profound alchemical knowledge. Outside, Huiqing couldn't help but glance at Song. This steadfast disciple, recognized as Xixianjian's foremost alchemist, was so immersed in alchemy that he refused advancement, dismissing higher realms of cultivation with disdain. Even 4th- and 5th-tier senior brothers paled in comparison to his alchemical prowess. He often tinkered with terrifying alchemical experiments, even earning himself confinement by the supervisor. Had Su Qian's alchemy truly reached such heights that he could now guide Song Qing? Just as Su Qian was about to continue, he noticed the princess standing behind him, along with Wei Yuan. Su Qian nearly jumped out of his skin, being watched by superiors during a serious lecture. His strategy with the white-robed alchemists was to show off. The more flamboyant, the better. But with Wei Yuan, his approach was to prove his loyalty. This is within reasonable limits, putting on a harmless little act. But the current situation isn't just a small act, it's a full-on split. But from another perspective, demonstrating your value in front of a leader is also a way to gain attention and increase your leverage. And who's the girl next to the boss? She's so strikingly beautiful. Su Qian coughed lightly and continued, this is the main point I want to discuss. In today's lecture, within all things, there exist some very subtle substances. These substances constitute the vast world we see. These substances are interconnected and follow certain patterns. To explain with the simplest example, a single pill requires dozens of medicinal herbs to refine, but the effects of each medicinal herb are clearly different. Why is that? Because the subtle substances within certain herbs share similar properties. Thus, they can react and fuse with each other. The same principle applies to refining metals. In that incomplete alchemy manual, There's a record of a formula about the similar properties of subtle substances. I call this formula the periodic table of elements. In an instant, the sound of rapid breathing echoed through the hall. The white-robed figures from the four heavens were overwhelmed with excitement. Song Qing even rushed up to Su Qian, exclaiming, "I understand now. The reason my living alchemy failed is because they don't share similar properties." Exactly. How could a cat and a tree possibly share similar properties? They're completely different things. Su Qian smiled. Your interpretation is somewhat reasonable, though forced. Senior brother Song truly lives up to his reputation as a prodigy of alchemy. Your insight is extraordinary. Song Qing frowned. Though I grasp your logic, how do we verify shared traits between living beings? And where, exactly, lies the correct path for bioalchemy involving living creatures? Su Qian thought, great question. I've been waiting to steer you here. He replied solemnly. The key to bioalchemy lies in cells. Song Qing was puzzled. Another unfamiliar term he'd never heard. Su Qian hid his guilt. Truthfully, I barely understand cells myself, but it doesn't matter. If this works, credit goes to my teaching. If it fails, blame his incompetence. He pulled a booklet from his robe. This is my second blue manual for the Sishianjian. It contains mnemonic rhymes for the periodic table of elements, along with my personal annotations. It also includes senior brother Song Qing's correct direction for bioalchemy. It's all in here. Song Qing eagerly snatched, devouring its contents. The first line read, "A cell is the beginning." As he read on, Song Qing clutched the booklet tightly and burst into laughter. Looking up at the sky, the white-robed alchemists gazed intently at the booklet in Song Qing's hands, burning with curiosity about its contents. Their hearts itched like a cat was scratching at them. Song Qing composed himself, speaking calmly. As Su Qian just said, the field of bioalchemy is too profound. Your level of understanding isn't there yet. Once I've fully comprehended it, I'll naturally teach you. The white-robed alchemists could only reluctantly give up their desire to peek. Chemistry encompasses countless fields. For example, electrochemistry, nuclear chemistry, and quantum chemistry. Su Qian himself only had a partial understanding. He decided not to continue further. It wasn't wise to reveal everything he knew at once. After all, they weren't his disciples, and they didn't deserve his full knowledge. The principle of equivalent exchange required a slow, steady flow. The white-robed alchemists stood up, moving in unison to bow to Su Qian. We thank young Master Su for imparting your wisdom. Outside the door, Huai Qing witnessed everything, his expression slightly dazed. The alchemists of Sishianjian, paying respects to a martial disciple. This was likely the first time since the founding of Sishianjian. With this alone, Su Qian would earn a brief mention in the annals of history. Song Qing exhaled and said to Chu Kaiwei, junior sister, the princess is here to see you. Su Qian hurried forward, clasping his fists. Greetings, Lord Wei. Wei Yuan smiled, gesturing to the woman in the This is Her Highness the Princess. Li Yuchen had mentioned to him before that his promotion to the Night Watch was due to the prince's recommendation. Seeing her up close, Su Qian was momentarily stunned by the prince's breathtaking beauty. He clasped his fists again and said, Thank you, Your Highness, for your recommendation. Princess Huiqing smiled gracefully, her voice melodious. The alchemy manual you mentioned earlier, Su Qian replied. When I was young, I encountered a master who imparted to me a manual on alchemy. If Huiqing or Wei Yuan asked to see it, he planned to say he had lost it by accident, but its contents were already memorized in his mind. With this knowledge, I've exploited the Sishianjian's alchemists, and now I'll freeload off the princess and Wei Yuan. To his surprise, the princess merely smiled and asked no further questions. That excuse was well crafted. This princess is sharp, at least, a very clever woman. Wei Yuan turned to the young constable. Come with me to meet the Grand Astrologer. Su Qian's breathing hitched involuntarily. The Grand Astrologer Jianzheng, pinnacle of astrological arts. At the top of Starview Tower, Su Qian followed Wei Yuan to the octagonal platform. There, seated at the edge of the table, was the white-robed Grand Astrologer, his back to them. A hoarse voice echoed, You've come. Su Qian wondered if it was his imagination, but he felt as though the words were directed at him. Wei Yuan stepped to the platform's edge. I have, he replied calmly. It's been long since we last played chess. Grand Astrologer, would you care for a game with me? The Grand Astrologer remained silent. He waved his hand, and a chessboard with 2 sets of pieces materialized on the table. Wei Yuan and Jianzheng sat facing each other. Grand Astrologer, during this time, have you been diligently observing the mortal realm? Jianzheng replied, Age has clouded my vision. I see little clearly now. After a pause, Wei Yuan said gravely, Chun Shangdao of the Dizong sect has fallen to demonic cultivation. Jianzheng replied calmly, Extremes beget reversal. Ascending to immortality through virtue is no simple feat. Wei Yuan continued, I've received word that remnants of the 10,000 demons' kingdom lurk in the capital. Merely minor players. Jianzheng dismissed. Wei Yuan nodded, reassured, and remarked casually, If I recall correctly, the Ranzong sect relocated to the imperial city 19 years ago. Before that, His Majesty pleaded with the prior of heaven, earth, and man, but the three sects paid no heed. Jianzhong remained silent. Wei Yuan pressed further. Recently, remnants of the 10,000 Demons Kingdom have been active near the capital. In 3 days, His Majesty will hold the ancestral worship ceremony. Grand Astrologer, keep a close watch over the capital. Su Qian stood awkwardly to the side, listening to their lofty conversation. He couldn't interject, and the silence grew uncomfortable. Her chess moves quickened. Soon, neither needed time to think. The game ended in a draw. Jianzhong finally spoke. Years ago, when you pursued martial arts, I prophesied that the great Feng dynasty would produce a second realm master. Yet you abandoned your cultivation. Wei Yuan shook his head. It held no meaning. Why not walk the Tao? The path? The Tao and the scholars of Cloudpath Academy cannot coexist. Boring. 25 years ago, I asked if you would become my disciple. Wei Yuan replied flatly, I have no interest in alchemy. Jianzhong fell silent. After a moment, he turned to Su Qian. Remarkable. You've taught my students well. In return, I offer you a gift. Su Qian blinked in disbelief. Wait, free rewards. As he stood stunned, a sharp whistling sound pierced the air. 2 chunks of metal shot past Su Qian toward Jianzhong. Mid-flight, the metal melted and fused, morphing into a rough sword blade. That landed in Jianzhong's palm. He gripped the blade blank, then swept his other hand over it. In an instant, it transformed into a dark gold long sword. Jianzhong flicked his finger, sending the blade spinning, until it halted, hovering before Su Qian. Su Qian's worldview shattered. This is alchemy? This is straight-up magic. Alchemy should involve flasks and separating substances, not. His thoughts. Su Qian realized Jianzhong's display wasn't just a gift. It was a silent rebuke. No, he's mocking me. He's saying, young man, you know nothing of true alchemy. But free loot outweighed wounded pride. Su Qian clasped his fists. Thank you, Grand Astrologer. He removed his robe, wrapped it around the blade, and cradled it in his arms. With this sword, my combat power just leveled up by 1 or 2 tiers. Descending the stairs, he encountered Chu Kaiwei and the princess ascending. Seizing the moment, he asked Chu Kaiwei out. Are you free tonight? I'll treat you to dinner at QBV Pavilion. To his surprise, the foodie Chu Kaiwei refused outright. I must enter the imperial palace later and stay overnight at the princess's residence. The unspoken message. The princess's palace has endless pastries and delicacies. QBV Pavilion's dishes are good, but how could they compare to the imperial chef's creations? Su Qian paused. How about the day after tomorrow? I'm on duty soon. His Majesty's ancestral ceremony is in 3 days. The night watch must handle security. After the ceremony, come to my house for a meal. Much cheaper than QBV Pavilion. I'll just cook something simple. That fancy restaurant is way overpriced. Chu Kaiwei's eyes lit up. Will you make noodles for me? Su Qian nodded. Looking forward to it. They parted ways. Chu Kaiwei led the princess upstairs, while Su Qian descended with Wei Yuan. Su Qian glanced upward, just as the princess looked down at him. Her eyes met. Su Qian grinned cheekily. The princess remained expressionless. Once Su Qian was out of sight, she gave a faint, disdainful smirk. Outside Starview Tower, Yang Yin asked, can you drive a carriage? Su Qian shook his head. Decent folks don't drive. Yang Yin nodded and handed him the reins, then retreated into the carriage. On the astrological platform, Princess Huiqing's voice rang clear. Grand Astrologer, I've long held a question. Jianzhong replied evenly. Speak, Your Highness. Since the Runzong sect entered the imperial city and swayed His Majesty to pursue Taoism 19 years ago, neglecting governance, chaos in Yunzhou, disasters plaguing Nanping, and the court's weakening hold over the southern frontiers, the northern tribes harbor wolfish ambitions. The great Feng dynasty faces turmoil within and threats without. The princess sighed. What are you waiting for? Huiqing waited, but no answer came. He turned to look, and found Jianzhong dozing off. His eyes narrowed. Chu Kaiwei smiled gently. Pray for the princess, she said. Ignore this old geezer. He's ancient already. Let him live out his few remaining years. Huiqing shot her a glance. Chu Kaiwei was the Four Heavens sect's sole female disciple. Indulged by all, she alone dared speak of Jianzhong with such irreverence. Huiqing shifted the topic. You're acquainted with that gong guard? Suning Yin is talented. Chu Kaiwei replied cheerfully. His words are honeyed, and I find him amusing. The Yangsheng Hall lies nearby. Resident Li Jing has waited 2 days for news of the distant upheaval. At last, something arrived. A minor official in a green robe led a group of craftsmen into Yangsheng Hall. Soon, clanging and banging echoed from inside, persisting until dusk. Master Hengyuan waited until nightfall, ensuring no ambush lay in wait. Neither night watchmen nor white-robed officials from the Bureau of Astronomy. Only then did he slip from the residential area into Yangsheng Hall. But to his astonishment, the hall's gates had been replaced, and not just the exterior. The interior was fully renovated. The elderly matron spotted Hengyuan, exclaiming, Master Hengyuan, you've returned. You needn't seek alms anymore. The court just issued funds to cover the arrears from past years. This afternoon, craftsmen repaired the entire courtyard. Master Hanyuan murmured, "Funds?" The elderly matron nodded eagerly. "Yes, 200 taels of silver. The children and elders here will have enough for the coming year. Tomorrow, I'll arrange winter clothes for everyone, just in time. Otherwise, many wouldn't survive the winter." In the Su Manor's rear courtyard, Su Qian jolted awake at midnight, irritation boiling within. He growled, "Which lunatics? Spamming the group chat?" Checking the messages, he saw it was from number 6. "Number 1. Number 3. Have you uncovered my hiding place?" Su snapped, "Baldy. Stop yapping and sleep." Jinian's voice chimed in, confused. "What's going on?" Hung Yuan continued typing. "I didn't expect my hiding place to be exposed so soon, but it's fine to tell you now. I'm at Yangsheng Hall in the Eastern District. I brought the rescued children here." The hall has been barely scraping by, with a few laborers who also had nowhere else to go, and a group of homeless children and elderly widows. But today, the court suddenly remembered this place. They sent workers to repair the courtyard and compensated for the unpaid funds from previous years. Before this, the elderly matron had gone to petition several times, only to be driven away. "I know there must be a special reason for the funds to be released now," Hung Yuan secretly speculated. "If it were the night watchman who found me, number 6 wouldn't be surprised. But the fact that numbers 1 and 3 could track down his hideout so quickly left Lu Zhishan utterly stunned. Number 1 immediately denied it. "It wasn't me." The Wulongs launched into another round of analysis. "Not number 1, then it must be number 3. Number 3, true to his reputation as a scholar of Yunlu Academy, had uncovered number SAX's background during the Ping Yuanhua case, but took no action against number 6. Instead, he quietly aided him behind the scenes. Truly a scholar's way." Number 2 pressed. "Was it you?" Number 3? Su Qian stayed silent. "Not me. I didn't do it. Stop overestimating me." Suddenly, Su Qian remembered something. He'd sold out number 6 to Wei Yuan 2 days prior. With Wei Yuan's methods, based on the clues he provided, pinpointing number SIX's location wouldn't be hard. Number 6 had rescued so many children. How to shelter and relocate them? Su Qian's first instinct was to investigate charity houses across the capital. Who else but Wei Yuan could command imperial agents? Though they'd identified Ping Yuanhua's killer, no arrest was made. Instead, overdue funds were repaid to the charity houses, and workers were sent to repair the courtyard's crumbling walls. Under dim candlelight, Su Qian muttered, "Busy for father." Early the next morning, as Su Qian entered the rear hall, he heard Little Bean's shrill voice. A bright red pimple had sprouted on her fair, delicate cheek. It hurt when pressed. Auntie had lied, saying it was a flesh-eating worm, devouring her face, and she'd be disfigured by tomorrow. "No one would marry you in the future," Su Qian teased. "This isn't disfigurement. It's a sign of blossoming beauty." Little Bean blinked. "What's blossoming beauty?" "It means you'll grow prettier than your mother and sister." Convinced, Little Bean brightened and devoured 3 extra bowls of porridge at breakfast. At the night watchman's office, Song Tingfeng eyed him enviously. "That's a fine blade." Su Qian rested a hand on the hilt, tilting it to reveal 3 inches of the obsidian steel blade. "A gift from the Imperial Astrology Bureau," he smirked. He omitted that it came from a high-ranking eunuch. No one would believe him anyway, and if they did, word might spread, inviting unwanted covetous eyes. Song Tingfeng and Zhu Guangxiao gasped. "Is it a magic artifact?" Su Qian shook his head. "Not an artifact. No inscribed formations. Its only trait is sharpness, just like its owner." The two stared blankly. "This guy's got no shame." Later, Su Qian asked, "The day after tomorrow is the Emperor's ancestral worship ceremony. You've handled this before, right?" "We just guard Sangpa's perimeter. Since the ceremony's held there." "You knew that, yeah?" Sangpa's the lake outside the Imperial City, nestled within the Wu Wei Battalion's defense zone. The Grand Temple and Ministry of Rites manage the rituals. Our job's simple. Keep order and protect the royal family. Outer patrols fall to the Imperial Blades, Jinwu Guard, and the Forbidden Army. Today's shift is daytime patrol. Day shifts have perks. Besides us, regular constables and Tiger Fong officers will assist. This gave them time to slack off, and when tired, they'd visit the brothels for a break. Suddenly, Su Qian felt a familiar sensation at his feet. He bent down, pretending to brush dirt off his shoes, and reached out to pat Song Tingfeng's shoulder. Song Tingfeng, oblivious, turned and barked. "You're a grown man, fussing over shoes? Living the delicate life, huh?" As they walked and chatted, they spotted a pair of Tiger Fong officers in official uniforms ahead. Officer Lu Qing, noticing the trio, called out aggressively, "Young Master Su, we meet again. And you too. Still alive, I see." The two scowled. "He's Su Gongzi, and we're just you two? So Guangxiao and I are just nameless lackeys?" At that moment, Lu Qing announced, "There's been a murder on Sanshui Street. It's within your patrol jurisdiction. Since we're here, let's investigate together." The trio stiffened. "A murder?" Su Qian and his colleagues arrived at Sanshui Street, stopping outside a residence. Su Qian entered the courtyard, scrutinizing the mother and son before him. The deceased was this woman's husband, father to an 11-year-old boy. Name, Lu Han. A low-ranking officer in the Jinwu Guard. Lu Qing reported, the study's intact, no signs of forced entry, no footprints near windows, nothing on the beams either. Su Qian frowned. Likely someone he knew, with doors and windows untouched, and no traces on the beam. This rules out a forced break-in. The victim sat upright. Based on his posture slumped over the desk, death was instantaneous. No signs of struggle. Normally, sitting in a home study, one would be relaxed, not rigid like this. It suggests the victim knew the killer. Not just knew them, but feared or respected them deeply. At first glance, the throat wound seems the cause, but I suspect the fatal strike was to the forehead. The killer was precise. Didn't slash the trachea, but severed the carotid artery on the side. Clearly a professional. A slit throat doesn't kill instantly, yet this officer collapsed dead on the desk. No struggle, no blood splatter. Conclusion. The throat wound isn't the true cause of death. What truly killed him instantly was the killer shattering his frontal bone. The brain suffered fatal damage, leaving no chance for resistance or struggle. Death was immediate. Full body rigor mortis has set in, lividity fixed, no shifting, corneas heavily clouded. Time of death over 17 hours ago, meaning the murder occurred at night. I suggest focusing on these leads. First, check Tiger Fong's recent night patrol records. Second, question patrol officers. Did they notice anything suspicious nearby? Third, interview night watchmen assigned to this area's night shift. Fourth, ask the family. What were the victim's recent interactions? Silence hung thick in the air. Lu Qing and the others gaped at him, stunned. That's it? He pieced together a clear deduction this fast, and even mapped out a full investigative strategy? Shortly after, a constable reported, the victim had no recent enemies, and no visitors last night. Su Qian frowned. A low-ranking officer. No personal grudges. Then why would the killer risk a nighttime break-in? To murder him? Lu Qing's eyes narrowed. Bring Lu Han's wife back for questioning. The constables rushed out. Moments later, Lu Qing glared at Madame Chon. Did your household recently come into extra silver? Or did Lu Han mention anything unusual? The widow hesitated, then whispered, a few days ago, my husband mentioned leaving the capital to live freely elsewhere. Su Qian pressed. How many days exactly? She shook her head. I can't recall. Questioning others nearby yielded no further clues. The group exited the courtyard, and Lu Qing speculated he was likely silenced for accepting a bribe. Song Tingfeng scoffed. But why kill a low-ranking officer? What could he have known? Su Qian paused. If I'm not mistaken, the Jinwu Guard oversees the inner city's east gate, and the Imperial City's east gate. The room fell silent. Every face darkened. Su Qian added slowly, perhaps, we should meet Lu Han's direct superior. Lu Han's superior is Centurion Jin Wuwei of the Jinwu Guard. Both hold the rank of Centurion, but Jin Wuwei's status far surpasses that of the Imperial Blade Guards. The latter are mere unit security, while the former are the Emperor's personal guard. But to question them, Su Qian and the others need a warrant issued by the Yamen. Su Qian returned to Chunfeng Hall and reported the matter to Li Yuchen. Li Yuchen frowned. This is suspicious, but the Imperial City is heavily guarded. A minor official can't cause much trouble. Proceed with routine questioning. Jin Wuwei will handle their internal investigation. Focus instead on the Emperor's ancestral ceremony. That's our priority now. With that, he handed Su Qian the warrant. East Gate of the Imperial City. Su Qian and the others waited for 2 hours before impatience began to simmer. Then, the man they sought arrived. Zhou Qixiang, Jinwu Guard Centurion. Zhou barked. What's this about? Took you long enough. Song Tingfeng cut in. Centurion Zhou, do you have an officer named Lu Han under your command? As he spoke, Su Qian subtly pulled a talisman from his sleeve. Channeling qi, his eyes glowed faintly with cyan light. Zhou's face twitched, masking a flicker of rage. Yes, he served here. Song Tingfeng said coldly, he's dead. Zhou feigned shock. What? Lu Qing pressed. Did Lu Han act unusually recently? Zhou shook his head. Nothing unusual. Lu Qing pressed further. He guarded the east gate. Did any suspicious individuals or items pass through the Imperial Gate? Zhou Baihu shook his head again. Guarding the Imperial City requires many hands. Bribing one officer is useless, unless you bribe them all, which is impossible. Zhu Guangxiao interjected. What if you were bribed? Zhou Baihu's face darkened, suppressed rage boiling over. What do you imply? Song Tingfeng defused. Routine questions. Centurion Zhou. No need for anger. With the Emperor's ceremony nearing, we must ensure no disruptions. After more questions, Zhou Baihu remained compliant. Under Su Qian's watchful gaze, his qi observation piercing through lies, Zhou stifled his temper, until Su Qian's mystical sight faded. Song Tingfeng concluded, that's all for now. How did the vital signs check go? Su Qian shook his head. He wasn't lying. Perhaps the sweating was due to other unknown matters like being silenced. Let's set this case aside for now. The ancestral worship ceremony takes priority. The emperor's ceremony is the day after tomorrow. Everything else must wait. After bidding farewell to LV Qing and the others, Su Qian re-examined the entire process. He temporarily pushed the matter of the sweating aside. Gongzi year, 10th month, 15th day Jiazi day. An auspicious day for blessings and ancestral worship. Today was the imperial family's ancestral worship ceremony. Every year on this day, the gates of the inner city would be sealed. His uncle, a Jade Blade Centurion, was assigned to enforce the lockdown in the inner city. Residents were ordered to stay indoors. A similar ceremony is held again at the dawn of spring, known as the heaven worship ritual, to pray for favorable weather and bountiful harvests, and peace across the land. Since yesterday, every inn in the inner city had been rigorous. All wandering martial artists were expelled to the outer city. Taverns closed, and inns were barred from housing guests. As a night watchman, Su Qian was assigned to guard duty at Sangpa Slope. Sangpa bordered a small lake, adjacent to the imperial city. But Sangbo Lake was no ordinary body of water. It carried a legendary tale, tied to the founding emperor of the Great Phoenix Dynasty. It was said Sangbo was once called Xuanwu Lake, home to the mythical beast Xuanwu. Long ago, when the Great Phoenix Emperor's rebellion faltered, he retreated to Sangbo Lake with his remaining troops, starving and desperate. In their darkest hour, the lake waters began to boil. Xuanwu emerged, parting the waves. Embedded in its shell was a divine sword, one said to sever heavens and slay immortals. Xuanwu declared it had waited centuries here, for one chosen by destiny. With those words, it offered the sword and vanished into the mist. Armed with the divine blade, the emperor meditated by the lake for 3 years. He emerged enlightened, rallied his forces anew, and won every battle thereafter. Thus, he toppled the Fushou de Chanchal, corrupt previous dynasty. After unifying the Central Plains, the Great Phoenix Dynasty established. Sangbo became sacred ground, the emperor's place of enlightenment, imbued with profound symbolic significance. Hence, the imperial family holds its annual ancestral rites at Sangpa Slope, the temple upon the lake. The temple enshrines a statue of the founding emperor. After learning this history, Su Qian muttered inwardly. Even Liu Bang rose up by slaying a white serpent. Who knows how much of this legend is real? Probably half myth, half embellishment. Song Tingfeng interjected. After the ceremony, let's visit the Jia Fengxi. Su Qian chuckled. I could be the chaperone. Song Tingfeng glared. No, you're joining us. It'll show our camaraderie. Zhu Guangxiao deadpanned. He just wants you to invite Miss Fuxiang. Su Qian ignored their shameless banter. Song Tingfeng noticed. Why keep staring at the lake? Su Qian replied truthfully. Sangpa Lake feels eerie. It unsettles me. Song Tingfeng hastily hushed him. Quiet. Don't jinx it. You're just chilled by the wind. Sangbo Lake is sacred ground, the emperor's place of enlightenment. Watch your tongue. High-ranking guards have sharp ears. If they hear such talk, you'll face charges. A deep toll of bells and drums echoed suddenly, reverberating through the air. A solemn hush fell over the crowd. The night watchmen, who had been chatting idly, fell silent at once, their expressions turning grave. To the strains of ceremonial music, a vast procession emerged from the imperial city, marching towards Sangpa Slope. No horses, no carriages. All proceeded on foot. The procession included the royal family, clan nobles, and officials of every rank. This assembly represented the pinnacle of the Great Phoenix Dynasty's power. At its head walked Emperor Yuanjing, clad in austere Taoist robes. Though past 50, he exuded the immortal-like demeanor of a seasoned cultivator. Su Qian noticed the stunningly beautiful eldest princess among the retinue. The procession halted before an imperial tent draped in mourning silks. Emperor Yuanjing, flanked by 2 senior eunuchs, entered the tent. The rest remained outside. Su Qian watched as a group carried spirit tablets veiled in imperial yellow along a winding lakeside corridor to the altar. They arranged the tablets before the temple. Once preparations were complete, the grand ritual master announced outside the tent. The spirits are appeased. All hail His Majesty. Princes, princesses, and officials knelt in unison. At that moment, in the distance, figures clad in bright yellow ceremonial robes appeared solemnly before the crowd. Su Qian couldn't help but remark, this pomp feels even more solemn than the highest level meetings in my previous life. This trip was worth it. As Su Qian watched intently, he suddenly froze. Glancing discreetly, he noticed a message from number 12. I recall today is the Phoenix clan's ancestral worship ceremony. Number 1. Number 3, does the timing align? Day is indeed. I once attended a royal ancestral ceremony myself. Number 2 retorted dismissively. Wait, number 4, you served as an official back then? And held a high position? Number 4 admitted candidly. Su Qian paused. Number 4 was an official? Didn't number 4 have ties to the Imperial Academy's female scholars? Because I once guarded the pass, I became acquainted with the female monarch. Number 2 continues. This is interesting. Number 1 hasn't replied. Number 3 hasn't replied either. Su Qian, caught off guard by the sudden trap, forced a bitter smile, but secretly cursed. Number 2's message at this moment wasn't genuine concern about the royal ancestral rights, but a test to probe the identities of Number 3 and Number 1. Given the link between the Earthbook fragments and their holders, even sleepers would be alerted. So missing messages due to rest is impossible, unless there's an urgent situation preventing replies. But it's unlikely both Number 1 and Number 3 are in emergency simultaneously. If true, it means both are attending the ceremony, unable to openly retrieve their Earthbook fragments to reply. Meanwhile, Su Qian's actions drew Song Tingfeng's attention. Focus. No unnecessary movements. Su Qian half-heartedly acknowledged. His mentor noticed his hidden anxiety. This is bad. As a Yunlu Academy disciple, I've no reason or status to attend the royal rites. Now my cover is exposed. Yet Number 1 also didn't reply, meaning they're here too. Who could it be? Among the Tiandihui members, isn't Number 3 a Yunlu Academy disciple? As everyone knows, Yunlu Academy has nearly severed ties with the court. Even if one remained, they'd lack eligibility for the royal rites. Is Number 3 truly not from Yunlu Academy? But that can't be. If that's the case, how do you explain what happened before? Unless he attended the royal ancestral rites under a different identity. Yunlu Academy has planted someone in the imperial court. But what identity could that be? Number 2 pressed further. Number 4, you once served as an official. Analyze Number 3's situation for us. I do have a theory. But why should I share it with you? Number 2, you're not even in the capital. Even if we uncover Number 3 and Number 1's identities, what could you do? Number 2 bristled at the defiance. Now even these two are siding with Number 3. Su Qian suppressed his unease, refusing to check the messages. Then, a familiar dread surged through him again. Something about saying Bo feels sinister. A vague, suffocating sense of danger. Suddenly, amid the ceremonial music, Su Qian caught a faint, unnatural sound. A voice pleaded, "Save me, save me." Su Qian froze. Tingfeng Guangxiao, do you hear that strange noise? Song Tingfeng frowned. You mean the ritual music? It's a bit deafening, yes, Su Qian muttered. Before he could elaborate, the eerie voice resounded again, clearer this time. It emanated from Sangpa Lake, hoarse and suffocating, like a wraith hissing in his ear. The terror of it pricked Su Qian's neck with cold sweat. He whipped his head toward the lake. His gaze swept over the emperor ascending the altar, kowtowing every 3 steps in golden robes, the shore crowded with officials, princes, and princesses, and Wei Yuan with his adopted sons. The grand temple loomed, but as he turned, the voice vanished. Was it a hallucination? Su Qian inhaled sharply, avoiding further scrutiny. Yet the voice returned, clawing at his back like a specter, its breath chilling his ear. Su Qian's neck tensed, paralyzed. An invisible dread flooded his mind. Goosebumps prickled his skin. Sangpa Lake, where the founding emperor of Dafeng ascended, the sacred site of royal ancestral rites, was now echoing with a saint's cry for help. Su Qian's blood ran cold. Every instinct screamed at him to flee. He forced himself to steady his breath, ignoring his colleagues' glances, and pulled out the Earthbook fragment. What do you know about Sangpa? Tell me now. This is critical. Number 3 replied. You're truly at the ceremony? At Sangpa. Sangpa is where Dafeng's founder claimed the mandate of heaven. The dynasty's capital was nearly established there, though those legends lack verifiable records. Their credibility is questionable, but the divine sword is real. Enshrined in the temple at the lake's heart, the blade wielded by the founding emperor himself. It's said to embody Dafeng's national destiny. True, added another voice. During the Battle of Shanhaiguan, Emperor Yuanjing retrieved that sword and gifted it to the Prince of Zhenbei. Victory in that war relied not only on Wei Yuan's strategy, but also the prince's unmatched prowess. Su Qian stiffened. A divine sword in the temple. Is it calling for help? Even if the blade has consciousness, why would it reach out to me? The voice suddenly sharpened, as if enraged by his indifference. Save me, it screeched, vibrating through his skull, dazing him with vertigo. His thoughts scattered into chaos. Gritting his teeth, he typed, more details, anything from historical records, myth or fact. I need it all. When I compiled the Imperial Archives, I read that Sangpa is now guarded by the Capital Defense Army's barracks. No one approaches freely, not even royalty. No exceptions, because 500 years ago, the Crown Prince was boating on Sangbo Lake for leisure, but accidentally fell into the water. After being rescued by guards, he fell gravely ill, developing a mysterious affliction. 6 months later, he was found drowned in Sangbo Lake. The royal family believed the Crown Prince had angered the ancestral spirits, inviting divine punishment. To prevent such Sangbo was sealed off, opening only for ancestral rituals. Su Qian's heart raced. The Crown Prince fell into the lake and suffered a curse. Did he hear the cries for help, like I did? Will I meet the same fate? Found drowned in Sangbo Lake. Sangbo must hide a secret. not some tale of ancestral wrath. But the doomed crown prince knew nothing of this. Otherwise, he'd never have boated there. Clearly, this secret was known only to successive emperors. But why didn't those emperors seal Sangbo earlier? Why wait until the crown prince's death? Someone nearby asked. Why ask this now? But Su Qian, overwhelmed, couldn't respond. Trembling, he tucked the earthbook fragments into his robe, then weakly knelt down, clutching his head in agony. Song Tingfeng and Zhu Guangxiao noticed their colleague's distress. What's wrong? Can you hold on? Don't falter now. Disrupting His Majesty's ritual is a death sentence. By now, Emperor Yuanjing had ascended the altar. The Grand Astrologer presented the ceremonial text. The Emperor burned the offering, kowtowing 9 times to his ancestors. Wei Yuan glanced at the Empress nearby. Radiant and regal, she embodied imperial grace. Though mother to the princess, their features shared little resemblance. Yet the Empress remained a peerless beauty, her elegance undimmed by time. One could imagine her breathtaking youth. Wei Yuan seemed to sense something. The Empress, mother of the realm, turned gracefully. Their gazes met across the distance. For a fleeting moment, her eyes softened. But Wei Yuan recoiled as if burned, tearing his gaze away. He bowed stiffly, all emotion hardening in his eyes, leaving only weathered resolve. Yang Yin whispered urgently, Godfather, something's wrong there. Wei Yuan followed his gesture. A Tongluo guard knelt crumpled on the ground. Investigate, Wei Yuan commanded. The phantom whales clawed at Su Qian's mind, splintering his sanity. His skull throbbed with white-hot agony. He teetered on the edge of oblivion. Cries ravaged not his flesh, but his very soul. Yet the torment rivaled any physical torture, drowning in the spectral screams. Su Qian shattered. The Emperor's rights meant nothing. Protocols dissolved. All faded but survival. Death's shadow loomed. Nothing else mattered. He hammered his fists into the earth, rasping, "Shut up." Instantly, a golden sword aura exploded from the lakeside altar, shattering stone, piercing the heavens. Emperor Yuanjing staggered, knocked down by the shockwave. Night Watch guards surged forward, swarming the procession. Assassins! Shield the Emperor! Panic reigned for seconds, until the aurora dimmed as swiftly as it came. No attacker struck. Wei Yuan ascended the altar, bowing deeply. This servant has failed. I deserve death. The Emperor growled. Clear the altar. None shall approach. Adjusting his disheveled robe, Yuanjing strode into the ancestral temple. By the willow, Su Qian now heard only silence. As moments slipped by, his spirit finally settled. Now, he could observe his surroundings. The Tongluo guards around him had long dispersed, guarding the civil and military officials, royals, and clan members in a tight formation. The winding corridors brimmed with high-ranking figures, led by Wei Yuan of the Night Watch. What stunned Su Qian most was, the temple enshrining deities now bore a shattered roof beam, its gaping hole exposed. Ancestral rites had gone awry. Sangbo's secret had resurfaced. Su Qian's thoughts raced. As he clutched his throbbing head, rejoining the group, Song Tingfeng snapped. What was that earlier? Are you stable now? Su Qian feigned helplessness, overtrained these days. A backlash. But I've recovered. What just happened? Song Tingfeng growled. The Eternal Guardian Temple exploded. A sword aura erupted, churning Sangbo Lake like an earthquake. But it seems, no assassin struck. Su Qian's gaze returned to the altar. That hole was pierced by sword aura. If the divine sword holds such power, what or who called for help? No mere sword spirit. What lurks here? Masking his turmoil, Su Qian hurried toward the princess's vicinity. Bowing, he asked, Is your highness unharmed? His voice drew stares from the crowd. Some stifled laughter at his boldness. The princess replied coolly, I am well. Su Qian exhaled in relief. This humble officer is reassured. He retreated swiftly, having secured his moment of notice. But Princess Linen witnessed it all. Approaching, she mocked, Huaiqing, this lowly guard adores you so. Linen, Emperor Yuanjing's second daughter. Linen was stunningly beautiful, yet polar opposites to Huaiqing in charm. The sisters had long been rivals. Huaiqing replied calmly, admiration is too strong a word. He merely repays a kindness. Linen smirked, Dear sister, your allure is renowned across the capital. Even scholars of Yunlu Academy pine for you. If learned men falter so, how could a mere guard resist? Other princes and princesses watched gleefully, silent on Linen's barbed remarks. The crown prince barked Linen. Silence. All knew the royal siblings feud. Huaiqing, born of the empress, and Linen, daughter of consort Chun. Though consort Chun held greater favor, status still favored the empress's lineage. Yet young Linen relished provoking Huaiqing, needling her at every turn. Such courtly squabbles were commonplace, until Huaiqing, ever unyielding, ordered guards to seize Linen. When they hesitated, she took matters into her own hands, chasing her sister with a bamboo scroll. thrashing her. From palace to pavilion, maids and guards dared not intervene. The ruckus finally roused Emperor Yuanjing from meditation. Consort Chen stormed in, her daughter bruised, demanding justice. The emperor prepared to punish Huiqing, summoning her to the study. But Huiqing arrived armed, with stacks of texts, the Book of Rites, Comprehensive Institutions, and other Confucian classics. Quoting sage wisdom, she argued her case. 1. A begrudging Yuanjing declared her innocent, retreating to brood over his alchemy. As an adult, Huiqing grew restrained. Within the Eternal Guardian Temple, Yuanjing stood before the statue of the founding emperor, a stern figure in imperial robes and crown, his gaze fixed on a dust-covered bronze cocoon enshrined below. Yuanjingdi murmurs to himself as if lost in thought. What does it matter if you're first rank? You, who should have lived an eternal life, are still shackled by the fate of mortals. How many more years have you truly lived than an ordinary person? I ascended the throne at 20, defeated all my enemies, and sat upon that seat. No one could stand beside me. Yet in the end, I realized my greatest foe was time itself. Yuan Jingdi slowly shifts his gaze away, lowering his head to stare at the ground. He watches silently for a long while, then finally exhales deeply, as if relieved. He steps onto the sacred altar, standing shoulder to shoulder with the statue of the founding emperor. He boldly reaches out to touch the ancestor's statue, his fingers grazing the bronze sword. A sigh of relief escapes him, and he mutters softly, thankfully. The doors of the Eternal Mountain and River Temple Creek open. Officials and ministers bow deeply as Yuan Jingdi emerges, chanting in unison, "Long live your majesty." Yuan Jingdi's expression remains calm. "Continue the ancestral rites," he declares. The night watchmen quickly return to their posts, resuming their duties. Su Qian frowns, puzzled. Yuan Jingdi offered no explanation for the earlier disturbance. Logically, such an omen during ancestral worship should enrage the emperor. Yet Yuan Jingdi seemed almost prepared. He didn't reprimand. Perhaps he knew the true source of the anomaly. The ancestral temple hides secrets, Su Qian realizes. Secrets only Yuan Jingdi knows. And those secrets are likely tied to the cries for help I heard. Was the disturbance caused by me? But the temple itself holds mysteries, ones only the emperor understands. Maybe the chaos was inevitable. But due to his unique perception, Su Qian heard what he shouldn't have. His uniqueness, he suspects, stems from the mysterious bronze plaque he carries. The ceremony and the night watchmen disperse. The guards gather, murmuring uneasily about what transpired. Scared to death. I thought there was an assassin just now. How terrifying would that assassin be? How could they even enter the capital? Our capital is guarded by Jianzheng and the state preceptor. That was sword energy just now, right? I've never seen such terrifying sword energy before. Even Zhang Jinluo, who hones his sword intent, is nowhere close to that level. What do you think is really inside the temple? As they ponder, Su Qian interjects. That's the divine sword wielded by the founding emperor. During his conquests, the guard jumps in surprise, turning to see Su Qian. Oh, it's the guy who made two golden guards fight over him. The guard sneers. What do you know? Su Qian retorts. Go ask the elders yourself. The guard tenses, ready to argue, but his colleague drags him away. Finally off duty. Why waste time here? Let's hit the tavern. About the divine sword, the senior night watchman and silver guards know. During the Shanghai Pass campaign, Yuan Jingdi lent the sword to the Prince of Zhenbei. Notably, the Prince of Zhenbei is a royal uncle, Yuan Jingdi's younger brother. His official title is Prince of Huai, but he's called Prince of Zhenbei for guarding the north, keeping the Taoyuan tribes at bay. There are many princes, but only one Prince of Zhenbei. In the night watchman headquarters, Song Tingfeng smirks. The ancestral rites ended safely. Should we three head to the tavern tonight, or really head to the tavern? Hinting that Su Qian should treat them, but just then, a tremor pulses through him. Su Qian senses a message from the Book of Earth. He quickly excuses himself. Must have eaten something bad this morning. I need the latrine. In the headquarters restroom, Su Qian pulls out the Book of Earth fragment. The message is from Golden Lotus. A message from that sly old dog. Numbers 1 and 3 finished the ancestral rites. What happened to cause such a commotion? Number 2, the gossip-loving onlooker, messaged, Priest, what do you mean by that? There was an assassination attempt during the ancestral rites at Yuanjing Temple. Did they die? I need to go burn incense. Su Qian was speechless. He was certain number 2 wasn't from the imperial court, unless they planned to never meet number 1, or himself again. If this hot-headed rebel, number 2, lived in modern times, they'd track him through the internet in minutes, and drag him to the police station for tea. Jinlian continued, I was meditating, when I saw a sword aura pierce the sky, from the direction of Sangbo Temple. Like the surge of energy from Yunlu Academy that day, that imperial sword was the companion blade of the founding emperor of Great Feng. After the empire was established, it absorbed the nation's fortune daily, becoming a treasure tied to Great Feng's destiny. Logically, such an artifact shouldn't act unpredictably. Number 4 gasped. The Imperial Sword awakened? Did a first-rank powerhouse enter the capital and trigger it? Otherwise, I can't imagine why the Imperial Sword would stir. Number 5 scoffed. I just care if Great Feng's emperor is dead. If he is, I'll tell my father to raid the border. Su Qian, lurking silently, perked up. Number 5's a girl. Anyone who calls themselves this lady can't be ugly. She's gotta be a big-eyed cutie, right? Number 4 asked warily. Tell your father? What are you planning? Number 5 replied matter-of-factly. To attack the border, of course. Seize Great Feng's grain and women. Su Qian, the chief investigator, wasn't surprised. Number 5 is definitely from a tribal clan. Why else would she know so much about the Wanyao Kingdom's history? The Wanyao Kingdom lies in the southern frontier. Number 5 likely isn't from the northern tribes. Is she a southern barbarian or a northern one? Number 1 interjected. The ancestral rites have concluded. The Imperial Sword in the Eternal Mountain and River Temple awakened, causing some disturbances. It has since quieted again. Emperor Yuanjing entered the temple. No one knows what he did inside. Jinlian remarked. As expected, Sangbo Temple holds secrets. Secrets likely known only to the royal family. Number 1 pressed. How much do you know, priest? This humble priest knows little of such matters. But before the sword aura surged, I sensed demonic energy gathering near the imperial palace. Heng Yuan added. This monk also detected it, though it vanished swiftly. Number 2 speculated. So during the rites, a demonic cultivator or great fiend approached the capital, triggering the imperial sword's awakening and repelling the intruder? Number 4 mused. Even with treacherous schemes in the capital, only a top-tier powerhouse could breach the palace defenses in an instant. First-rank experts are rare. Who would dare invade the capital now? Su Qian pondered silently. Everyone assumes a first-rank powerhouse attacked, but the truth lies elsewhere. The real issue is Sangbo Temple itself. Number 4 asked. Priest Jinlian, when exactly did the sword aura surge? 1 hour ago. Why? Number 4 pieced it together. 1 hour ago. And number 3's urgent questions about Sangbo were also an hour ago, almost simultaneous. He was desperate to learn everything about Sangbo Temple. Number 3 is a Confucian scholar, well-versed in history. He couldn't possibly be ignorant of Sangbo's past. Why bother asking redundantly? If I were at the imperial ancestral rites, and this happened, I'd report it immediately. But number 3 didn't. He specifically asked about Sangbo's history. Number 3 is no fool. On the contrary, he's brilliant. As a Yunlu Academy scholar, he had no reason to ask such basics, unless he discovered something that contradicted recorded history, doubting his own knowledge of Sangbo. Maybe it wasn't a first-rank powerhouse, but Sangbo itself causing trouble. And number 3 glimpsed the truth. Haphazard assumptions are the deadliest. Su Qian, now the subject of wild speculation. Number 4, convinced he'd uncovered Su's slip-up, pressed. Number 3, you know something, don't you? You were there. After your questions about Sangbo, the Imperial Sword reacted instantly. That's no coincidence. As a Yunlu scholar, you must know Sangbo's history. The Academy's archives hold more details than I provided. Why ask me? It's suspicious. Su Qian scrambled for an answer. How do I explain this? I genuinely didn't know. And in the chaos earlier, I couldn't maintain my persona. Number 4 pressed harder. You doubted your own knowledge, suspecting the history you learned about Sangbo might be wrong. The group murmured in realization. So that's what happened. Su Qian also realized. Oh, so that's what I was thinking. Number 4's a master detective, even if his guess is wrong, but I have to admit he's sharp. The quickest thinker among us, as expected of a scholar who once served the court. Number 2 asked skeptically. Wait, if that's true, the problem lies with Sangbo itself, not a first-rank intruder? Number 4 asked number 3. Su Qian broke his silence, writing. I do know undisclosed secrets. The moment he sent this, messages flooded the Jade Path. What secrets? What do you know? Does Sangbo truly have hidden truths? Tell us. Heng Yuan chanted. Ba. Speak freely. Su Qian, squatting in a reeking latrine, hesitated. They're all so invested. Well, it involves Great Feng's Imperial Sword. Who wouldn't crave details about such a relic? Su Qian. It wasn't a first-rank attack. I'm certain of that. But why should I share? He added. Priest Jinlian, the Heaven and Earth Society has a flaw. Unless fixed, will remain a fractured group of distrustful strangers, offering little real aid. Jinlian, elaborate. Su Qian, mutual aid and shared secrets are our ideals. But they're naive. I'll reveal this secret. But what's in it for me, if I share? Lurkers like number 1 will just freeload. After a while, I'll stop sharing. Altogether, number 1 snapped, "Who's a freeloader?" Su Qian fired back, "You. You're the lurker-in-chief." He continued, "Su Qian, Priest Jalian and the Heaven and Earth Society members are scattered across the land, strangers, with no foundation of trust, who'd selflessly share with strangers? Jalian, your point is valid, young friend." Su Qian pressed, "Priest, here's an idea, let's sell secrets. For example, I'll price Sangbo's secret at 500 taels of gold. Interested buyers can contact me via the Jade Path. You, Priest, can block freeloaders. Not that I care for worldly wealth. But if you lack equivalent secrets, gold and silver will do." Su Qian grinned slyly at the mirror. "Buy my secret. I need a mansion." Jilian sighed. "Truthfully, while I know how to block the Jade Path, my injuries from the Imperial Ancestral Temple left my divine soul fractured. The Jade Path was sealed. And I'm still recovering. Otherwise, I wouldn't be this powerless." Su Qian's smile faded. "So, the blocking feature is offline?" Number 1 suggested. "Share the secret, and we'll promise equivalent secrets or funds in return." Number 4 countered. "Flawed. If I trade a secret with number 3, others benefit for free." Number 2 added, "Plus, how do we send silver? Across the realm?" Su Qian, "Until Priest Jilian recovers, let's do this. I'll share the secret, and you repay with equivalent secrets or gold. Fair, but credit is allowed. No payment is required upfront." This resolves number 4's concerns. As for number 2's reservations, I haven't found a solution yet. You may still defer payment. Exchange equivalent information in the future. After reading the message, the group agreed with Su Qian's proposal. Su Qian pressed further. "Why have number 7 and number 8 remain silent? If you don't voice your stance, this deal cannot proceed." Taoist Jilian intervened. "Number 7 vanished last year. Number 8 is compromised. Exclude them for now." Number 2 awkwardly admitted, "Number 7's Earthbook fragment is with me. He faked his death to escape danger." Su Qian paused briefly, then typed, "Then I have no objections. Regarding Sangbo's secret, I heard a cry for help from Sangbo." Su Qian's casual remark struck like thunder, shocking the entire Tiandihui. Sangbo, the ancestral tomb of Great Feng's founder, housing the national guardian sword, had a cry for help? Who was pleading? And to whom? Number 1 retorted, "Impossible. An unbelievable revelation." Number 2 mused, "This secret holds immense value. Could Sangbo imprison something? An entity beneath it?" What do you all think? Su Qian's thoughts stirred. "So I'm not the only one suspecting this." Number 5 gasped, "Is a demonic overlord sealed under Great Feng Sangbo?" Number 1, Number 3, Number 4 Yuri from Great Feng. "Do you recall any legends?" Monk Hongyuan interjected, "Don't bother. Number 1 clearly knows nothing. As we all know, Number 1 is a high-ranking imperial official. This implies only the royal family or perhaps the emperor alone knows." Number 1 declared, "I will investigate this matter." Number 3, "If I make progress, can it offset what I owe you?" Su Qian, "Depends on what you uncover." In Chunfeng Hall's side chamber, Zhu Guangxiao meditated deeply. Song Tingfeng flipped through shameful forbidden books. Though, these weren't from Yuan Jingdi or Dr. Roll's collection. Song Tingfeng teased, "Gonna give birth? Took so long." Su Qian nodded solemnly. "You rascal. That's your kid." Song Tingfeng ignored the jab, proposing instead, "Let's hit Fangxi tonight. I'll gather some colleagues, teach them that Russian roulette game." After a pause, he added earnestly, "Since the Yang Jinluo and Jiang Jinluo incident, many in the bureau envy you. They grumble behind your back. You need to socialize more, not just stick with me and Zhu Guangxiao." Zhu Guangxiao nodded. "I hear their whispers too." Su Qian hesitated, then relented. "Since joining the Night Watch, I've neglected bonding with colleagues, too busy honing my sword skills, and mingling with Wei Yuan and elites. My priorities shifted." Su Qian clapped. "Fine. Invite some trusted colleagues. We'll book Fangxi tonight. Yinfeng Pavilion's entire floor. My treat." Song Tingfeng and Zhu Guangxiao brightened, anticipation gleaming. In the archives, incense curled, as Wei Yuan pored over texts. As the last ember faded, he closed the Great Feng annals. At 1 p.m., Nan Gongqianru asked, "Father, any leads?" Wei Yuan rubbed his temples weary. He sighed, "I've pieced it together." Nan Gongqianru pressed, "What's in Sangbo? What secret lies there?" Wei Yuan said gravely, "This is not for you to know. Forget what happened today. Do not investigate. Do not speak of it privately." Yang Yin and Nan Gongqianru bowed in acknowledgement. As dusk approached, the night watchmen dispersed. They marched en masse toward Jiafengxi Alley, Su Qian among them. The night watchmen strode proudly into the alley. A junior officer asked skeptically, "Will Fuxiang, the courtesan, really meet us? Will Maying Pavilion let us reserve the whole place? Jaya Fangxi caters to scholars. Its entertainment's tailored for them. That's the social custom here. Though the Night Watch monitors officials, they share a fraught balance of power. Lower departments often seek compromises. If Fuxiang refuses to entertain us, we'd have to leave. Utterly humiliated. Yet Su Qian's Russian roulette proposal proved irresistible. The night watchman scoffed at his depravity, yet eagerly agreed to join. Suddenly, Su Qian slapped the doorman's rear, grinning. Tell your mistress. I'm reserving Maying Pavilion. The doorman stammered. At once, sir. She'll be overjoyed by Master Su's presence. Su Qian turned and flashed a thumbs up. The officers erupted in exhilaration. Inside the courtyard, Fuxiang personally attended to Su Qian, drawing envious gazes. Fuxiang, a famed courtesan, had soared in status after her poem, Fragrant Shadows in Moonlit Caves. Rumor held she no longer entertained common patrons. Yet Su Qian had booked Maying Pavilion. 3 rounds of wine later, Su Qian signaled Song Tingfeng, standing up. Gentlemen, I've had my fill. I'll retire early. The officers smirked knowingly, exchanging sly glances. Fuxiang later whispered, Su Lang rarely brings colleagues here. Su Qian sipped wine, sighing. Long story. Recently, 2 gold-ranked officers fought over recruiting me. Brawling in the night watch hall, Fuxiang embraced him from behind. Envy is a bitter poison. Su Qian shrugged. Green-eyed malice has plagued humanity forever. Fuxiang pouted. You should have told me earlier. I'd have hosted them properly. Su Qian smirked, tilting her chin up. Unnecessary. I need no help charming others. He pulled her into his lap, tipping his cup to drizzle wine down her alabaster neck. Su Qian laughed. This is how to drink. Fuxiang flushed, retreating to bathe away the scent. Seizing the chance, Su Qian slipped out to the courtyard, climbing onto the roof. He ignited a talisman. His vision shifted. The world bloomed with swirling auras, colors and energies pulsed in kaleidoscopic patterns. This time, he avoided gazing at forbidden sights. Recalling his last blinding mishap, focusing on Jaya Fangxi, he frowned. No trace of the emerald glow he'd spotted days prior. Chu Kaiwei had warned. Jade light signals demonic presence. That fleeting glimpse, during night patrol, had revealed something hidden here. Yet now, Jaya Fangxi lay eerily quiet. No demonic aura in sight. Did the demon flee, or is it masking its presence? Su Qian vaulted onto the courtyard wall, then slipped back into Fuxiang's chambers. Fuxiang embraced him from behind. Purring, Su Lang, where did you wander? His pulse quickened. No demon found, but a minx remains. What follows is premium content. Skip ahead? You're nodding. Done. Ad break. Stuck on a sheep level 2? I've beaten it. Click the link below to join my winning streak. Post-battle, Fuxiang lay flushed against him, murmuring, Su Lang. Buy my freedom, won't you? Su Qian stiffened. Money taints true love, he deflected. She squirmed pleadingly. I'd be content as your concubine. Just let me stay by your side. He ruffled her hair. Don't jest. Our bond shouldn't be shackled by contracts. Her glow faded. You just want free favors. Toss me aside when you're bored. She sees through me? He thought, startled. Aloud, he sighed. Redeeming a Jaya Fangxi courtesan. Costs 4,000 taels. The madam might refuse anyway. Fuxiang clung tighter. I've savings. And I've heard a night watchman can afford a townhouse in 3 years. Won't you take me? Su Qian frowned. In my past life, girls like her, masters of guilt-tripping, always demanding gifts. But why would a top-tier courtesan, in her prime, seek retirement so soon? And why fixate on a mere night watchman? Even becoming a concubine to a 4th-rank official would be more than enough for her. Su Qian replied dismissively. Let's wait until I've saved up enough silver, then I'll redeem your freedom. After speaking, Su Qian demonstrated his ability to fall asleep in 3 seconds. In the darkness, Fuxiang stared quietly at Su Qian's face, her eyes bright. The next morning, the group left Jaya Fangxi. A fellow constable sighed enviously. Such a talented man. Now I realize how dull and ignorant I was before. Su Qian smirked. I'll teach you all some even more interesting tricks later. Their eyes lit up. At the night watchman office, Su Qian, Song Tingfeng, and 2 others entered a side hall. Li Yuchen held a warrant. Today's task is a confiscation raid. The 3 of you will represent me. He repeated sternly. Do not overstep. No unnecessary actions. Assemble in the front courtyard in a quarter hour, and join the others. Su Qian was startled. A confiscation raid? Confiscation raids were part of the night watchman's duties, targeting disgraced officials. Confiscation meant seizing all assets, with every possession claimed by the state. The target this time was the Minister of Revenue's chief clerk, convicted of corruption and exiled. His property seized. Li Yuchen glanced at Su Qian. This man was under Vice Minister Zhou. He was hinting that this was fallout from the tax silver case. The collapse of a high-ranking official always dragged down those beneath him, like mud clinging to a pulled-up radish. Song Tingfeng explained arrogantly, first-timers need to learn the rules. Listen carefully. During the raid, the clerks will first inventory items in the front courtyard, record them, and then transport them back. But they don't handle the looting. He gave Su Qian a meaningful look. We do. Su Qian, being an old hand, immediately understood the implication. He probed. What does the boss mean? Song Tingfeng waved his hand. Don't mind him. The boss is too rigid, inflexible. We have to reasonably pursue our own interests. This is a relatively Song Tingfeng shared his view, refusing to extort merchants or exploit commoners. But now we're confiscating a corrupt official's estate. The target is a corrupt official. Their silver was ill-gotten anyway. We're plucking feathers from the phoenix, not the people. The raid was led by a silver gong. 3 bronze gongs under each silver gong formed teams to monitor each other and report misconduct. But over time, an unspoken rule emerged. Take a little, and it's as if no one took anything. Song Tingfeng pulled out his warrant. The lead silver gong spotted them approaching, his gaze sharpening. Qinshang barked, You 3 are late. Su Qian retorted, We're not late. The silver gong's eyes narrowed, his gaze turning razor-sharp. He drew his blade from its sheath and swung it straight at Su Qian's face. Su leaned back swiftly, dodging the strike. The silver gong sneered. You dare dodge? Song Tingfeng hurried between them, groveling, Our fault, sir. Don't be angry. We'll handle things properly. There's better work ahead. But the silver gong wasn't appeased. He kicked Song Tingfeng in the gut, sending him crashing to the ground. Clutching his chest, Song struggled, but couldn't rise. Rage surged through Su Qian. His hand instinctively gripped his sword hilt. He's targeting me, but I've never crossed him. The silver gong grinned coldly, striking again with his scabbard. Think you can draw your blade? You're unworthy. Su blocked frantically, the strikes burning across his arms. Seeing Su Qian back down, the silver gong sneered. Get in line. Su and the others joined the formation. More bronze gongs arrived. But the silver gong ignored them, letting them enter freely. Watching this, Su Qian was certain. He's targeting me. But why? I've never even met him. Just then, a voice behind him whispered. Lucky you didn't draw your blade earlier. You'd be finished. Su sighed. I'm not that reckless. Drawing on a silver gong is treason. The bronze gong nodded. His surname is Zhu, the youngest silver gong in the office. Su frowned. I don't even know him. The gong snorted. His father's also surnamed Zhu. Su nearly rolled his eyes. No kidding. Zhu Guangxiao beside him muttered. Golden gong. The bronze gong nodded. Not only the youngest silver gong, but also the most promising, rising star in the night watchmen. Until you showed up. Drinking with his men last week, I heard. Zhu Yinluo despises you. He's mocked you as just a bronze gong, repeatedly. Zhu Yinluo's sharp gaze swept over them, silencing the whispers. Su massaged his swollen arm, seething. It reminded him of past workplaces, where bosses made his life hell. Back then, he could rage quit. But the night watchman's rigid hierarchy left no room for rebellion. So you want to screw me over? Fine. I'll whisper in my godfather's ear. The team soon reached the official's mansion. Zhu Yinluo sliced the gate's plaque in half with his blade, then gestured sharply. Bronze gongs kicked open the main gate and swarmed in. Terrified servants stood frozen, trembling in silence. Suddenly, Zhu Yinluo glared at Su's group, laughing nearby. Rage flared again. He kicked Su Qian viciously, barking, Stay here. Don't move. I'll search you personally when we're done. If you dare hide valuables, punishment awaits. Su Qian glared at him, teeth. Song Tingfeng kept calming him. Or Su might have lunged with his blade, to split his skull. Once the others entered, the trio stood stranded. Song hissed, blocking our cut? That son of a bitch deserves no heirs. Su muttered, Sorry. I dragged you into this. Song rolled his eyes. Your arm, how bad is it? Su pushed up his sleeve, revealing a swollen crimson mess. Song paled. That bastard used chi. Superiors beat subordinates, but never with energy attacks. He's petty as hell. Zhu Guangxiao muttered. With this injury, you could report him. Headley won't let it slide. Song sighed. Don't stir trouble. Just avoid him next time. No, Su thought. I'll complain to my godfather. A woman's scream pierced the air. Su froze. The warrant said no arrests. Song grimaced. They're entertaining themselves. Common enough. Bullshit. Su snarled, charging toward the commotion. In a back room, a bronze gong. Su Su coldly noted his nameplate. Keep going. I'll remember your name. For my report. He repeated this threat room after room, halting the assaults. Men cursed but backed off, knowing Su's connection to a golden gong. Yet Zhu Yinluo appeared, face twisted with rage. Who gave you authority to interfere? Su met his glare. Humanity did. The standoff crackled. Until Zhu sneered, you'll regret this. Su smiled coldly. We'll see. He turned, shielding the trembling women. Let the games begin. He violently kicked open the doors of other rooms, using the same method to intimidate the predatory officers. But Zhu Yinluo was nowhere to be seen. Su Qian's heart sank. Without hesitation, he kicked open the final door. There, he finally spotted Zhu Yinluo. Zhu Yinluo snarled, "Get out." Su Qian ignored him, turning instead to the young girl. She couldn't be older than 12 or 13, tear stains streaking her face. At that moment, Su Qian's rage boiled over, but he held himself back, glaring coldly at Zhu Yinluo. The commotion drew other officers to the doorway, who watched in shock. As the newly renowned junior officer confronted the silver guard, the standoff intensified, until Zhu Yinluo suddenly burst into maniacal laughter, then glared furiously at Su Qian. "You reckless fool." Zhu Yinluo seized the girl's throat, lifting her into the air. Su Qian sensed the surging murderous aura, and instinctively gripped his sword hilt, retreating cautiously. To avoid the brunt of the threat, Zhu Yinluo strode out of the room, dragging the girl with him. Su Qian tightened his grip on his blade, poised to strike. Zhu Yinluo hauled the girl into the courtyard, sneering at Su Qian. "I just thought of something thrilling." With a thud, he slammed the girl onto a stone table. Su Qian's temple twitched with fury. Zhu Yinluo grinned darkly. "What will you do now, eh?" Tears streamed silently from the girl's eyes, her terror stifling any sound. Su Qian's hand trembled on his sword, his gaze sharpening like a blade. Song Tingfeng rushed over, face pale, and clamped down on Su Qian's sword arm. "Don't act rashly," he hissed. "You know the consequences." His voice held a desperate plea. Su Qian forced himself to steady his breath, recalling Song Tingfeng's warning. A junior officer attacking a silver guard was an unforgivable crime. Even killing you on the spot would be justified. By dragging the girl into the courtyard to humiliate her publicly, Zhu was provoking Su Qian, baiting him to act recklessly. Second, as a chi refiner, how could he fight a divine refinement expert? Neither status nor strength favored him. Zhu was determined to destroy him, but Su Qian refused to yield. He repeated coldly, "If you touch her, I'll report you to Duke Wei." Zhu Yinluo sneered, "Go ahead and report. After I've had my fun with this little beauty." Other officers might fear Su Qian's threats, but Zhu did not. With a golden guard father shielding him, no trouble could truly touch him. Every year, countless corrupt officials are purged, their womenfolk spared execution, but never truly escaping unscathed. They always pay a price. Zhu Yinluo scoffed, then ripped open the girl's dress. The fate awaiting this middle school-aged girl pierced the soul of Su Qian, a man from the 21st century. Song Tingfeng desperately held Su Qian back, preventing him from drawing his blade, but Su Qian's voice turned icy. "Let go." Song Tingfeng saw the unshakable resolve in his eyes and faltered, releasing his grip. Su Qian's emotions solidified into cold resolve. His thumb pressed against the hilt of his black gold blade, lifting the guard, just enough to free an inch of steel. Zhu Yinluo cackled wildly. "I've been waiting for you to draw that sword." In a blur, he lunged at Su Qian, shouting, "Attack a silver guard, and death is your fate." A torrent of murderous aura crashed over them like a tidal wave. Yet Su Qian stood unmoving, steady as a mountain. Focus, precision, perfection. A blade hissed from its sheath. A razor-thin arc of light flashed and vanished. Zhu Yinluo froze mid-lunge, his body suspended in the air. To the onlookers, Su Qian's hand had barely twitched. The deafening clang moments ago felt like an illusion. Seconds later, Zhu Yinluo's chest split open. The silver guard emblem on his chest shattered instantly, along with his life. Zhu Yinluo hadn't even seen Su Qian draw his blade. Before his defeat, he collapsed backward weakly. The courtyard plunged into silence. The crowd finally grasped what had transpired. Song Tingfeng was the first to react, shouting hoarsely, "Save him." He rushed to Zhu Yinluo's side, checking for a pulse. The man was still barely alive. Chaos erupted. Some Tongluo scrambled to stabilize Zhu Yinluo before carrying him away, racing back to the Night Watch headquarters for aid. Others drew their blades, a chorus of steel ringing out. As they encircled Su Qian, the taciturn Zhu Guangxiao stepping in front of Su Qian stood frozen, breath ragged, still reeling from the adrenaline. Song Tingfeng, pale-faced, rasped, "You should flee. Now." Su Qian shook his head. That single strike had drained him completely. Exhaustion etched his face. "If I run, what happens to my uncle and aunt?" Song Tingfeng snarled, grabbing Su Qian by the collar. "Was it worth it?" For a girl you don't even know, was it worth it? Su Qian met his gaze, weary but resolute. She's just a child. Some things matter more than life. Song Tingfeng's grip on his collar loosened, his anger dissolving into helplessness. Su Qian removed his badge and blade, placing them on the ground. He then turned toward the horizon, performing a gesture no one understood. Standing tall, he snapped a crisp Song Tingfeng, tense, barked orders. Don't let Zhu Yinluo's men strike first, he shouted to the crowd. Stand down. By the Night Watch's authority, Su Qian was the first to rush forward and subdue him, then scanned the crowd. Su Qian attacked his superior in defiance of law and order. He must be handed over to the authorities for trial. This man serves under me. If Li Yingluo's subordinate has committed such a grave crime, we share responsibility. We will escort him back to the yamen ourselves. The rest of you, continue the property confiscation once we leave the city limits. Then, turning to Zhu Guangxiao, he ordered, gather a few of our colleagues to escort him back to the yamen. I'll go ahead immediately to report this matter to the chief. Under no circumstances let Zhu Yinluo's men take custody of him, and ensure Su Mingyan is closely guarded. Having said this, Song Tingfeng spurred his horse and galloped away, whipping the horse's rear, shouting, Night Watchman on duty. Everyone, clear the way. Pedestrians scrambled to retreat in panic, curses erupting all around. Song Tingfeng, drenched in sweat, ran into the Spring Breeze Hall, panting heavily. Before Li Yuchen could speak, Song Tingfeng urgently cried, Su Qian nearly killed Zhu Yinluo. Ho Susu tried to save him, but Zhu Guangxiao and our colleagues are already escorting him back to the yamen. Zhu Yinluo will learn of this soon. I fear Su Qian won't even make it to the yamen alive. Li Yuchen shot to his feet, storming out of the Spring Breeze Hall with Song Tingfeng. His target was clear, Yang Yan's Divine Spear Hall. The two moved swiftly, Li Yuchen demanding as they walked, explain everything. What happened? Song Tingfeng, still gasping for breath, replied hurriedly, that bastard Zhu tried to assault the female relatives of the convicted official. Su Ningyan intervened. They clashed, and Su Ningyan slashed Zhu Yinluo with his blade. Now Zhu's life hangs by a thread. Song Tingfeng added details, how Zhu Yinluo had targeted and harassed Su Qian even before their mission began. Li Yuchen's eyes hardened. Assaulting the families of convicts. When we meet Yang Jinluo, repeat everything you just said, but remember one thing. Do not mention Zhu Yinluo's deliberate harassment of Su Qian. Song Tingfeng paused for a moment, then instantly understood. If they revealed the prior conflict within the yamen, Yang Jinluo might assume Su Qian's clash with Zhu Yinluo was driven by personal vendetta. That would frame it as a feud-fueled brawl, whereas omitting the harassment frames Su Qian as acting purely by duty. The structure of the confiscation team was designed to prevent corruption through mutual oversight, yet Su Qian still erred. A grave mistake. He should have reported Zhu Yinluo to the yamen, not taken matters into his own hands, and now his superior lies critically wounded. In any yamen, assaulting a superior is punishable by waist-cutting execution. Song Tingfeng's lips were parched. Is there still hope for him? Li Yuchen sighed and shook his head. I don't know. They arrived at the Divine Spear Hall. Li Yuchen barked, Yang Jinluo, a disaster has struck. Yang Yin, meditating cross-legged. Li Yuchen glanced at Song Tingfeng. The latter recounted the conflict between Su Qian and Zhu Yinluo during the confiscation, omitting the earlier provocation. Li Yuchen added gravely, given Zhu Jinluo's temper, Su Qian may never return alive. Yang Yan's expression darkened. Understood. He rose and vanished from the hall in an instant. Zhu Yang of the Eagle Hall in the Night Watchman Yamen was one of the 10 bronze gongs in the capital. A seasoned veteran, he had enlisted young, starting as a common foot soldier and rising through merit to become a centurion. Later, Wei Yuan noticed him and recruited him into the Night Watchman for grooming, a trusted subordinate of Wei Yuan. Jinluo's status was just slightly below that of the 2 mingling heirs. Zhu Yang had 3 sons. The eldest, neither scholarly nor martial. The second, a half-hearted scholar, works at the Ministry of Personnel. Only the 3rd son, Zhu Chengzhu, is exceptionally talented. He's the youngest in the Night Watchman office. Yinluo is highly valued by Zhu Yangqi. 2. Doctors frantically suture Zhu Chengzhu's wound. One doctor says, if the blade had gone half an inch deeper, his heart would have been pierced. Even the alchemists from the astrology department couldn't have saved him then. Thankfully, Yinluo shielded Lord Zhu from the fatal strike. He narrowly survived, but the blade's energy has invaded his vital organs. If the energy isn't expelled, Lord Zhu has at most half an hour left. Zhu Jinluo's voice sharpens. When will the astrology department's alchemists arrive? Yinluo replies, they've been summoned. They'll be here soon. Zhu Jinluo nods. Who did this? Yinluo answers, Su Qian, a bronze gong under Li Yuchen. Zhu Jinluo possessed heard of this minor figure. Jiang Yuzhong and Yang Yin fought because of him. But how could a mere bronze gong injure my son? Yinluo explains, during the assembly, the bronze gong arrived late. Zhu Yinluo reprimanded him, but he held a grudge. During the confiscation, Zhu Yinluo merely teased a female relative of the convicted official. Su Qian drew his blade and attacked. Su Qian is already being escorted back and should arrive at the office shortly. Su Qian rides his mare, surrounded by bronze gongs, back to the night watchman office. Assaulting a superior is punishable by execution waist cutting. Do you regret it? Su Qian has asked himself this repeatedly. He fears death. But he does not regret it. The convicted official's family could have left unharmed. I've always told myself to adapt to this era's rules, to blend into its fabric. But today, I chose not to. Blend with the light, become one with the dust, words Su Xinyan once told himself, and words he now repeats inwardly. Meanwhile, Zhu Jinluo storms out of the office and gazes down the street, spotting a group of riders approaching slowly. Among them, Su Qian sits with his hands bound by rope. Zhu Jinluo shows no rage or murderous intent. Instead, he manipulates qi with his fingers. Clang! Zhu Guangxiao's blade unsheathes itself and slashes towards Su Qian under qi control. But in that critical moment, another bronze gong's blade flies from its scabbard, intercepting the strike aimed at Su Qian. A mere half-inch closer, and Su Qian would have died instantly. Now, the two blades clatter to the ground. Zhu Jinluo suppresses his fury. Attempted murder of a superior warrants execution. You cannot protect him. Yang Yin retorts coldly. If he's to be executed, I'll do it. When did you gain the right to touch someone under my command? Zhu Jinluo growls. Fine. Let Lord Wei decide. The two head to the Tower of Inquiry to seek Wei Yuan's judgment. Zhu Jinluo speaks first, repeating Yinluo's embellished account of the incident. Yang Yin interjects firmly. Father, my version differs. Zhu Changzhu exploited the confiscation to assault a female relative of the convicted official. Su Qian intervened, but Zhu Changzhu dragged her into the courtyard and publicly humiliated her. Su Qian acted in righteous anger after failed attempts to stop him. Zhu Jinluo roars, nonsense. That bronze gong sought revenge out of malice. Wei Yuan sips tea calmly before remarking, since accounts conflict, let the witnesses testify. Zhu Guangxiao nudges Song Tingfeng forward, a man of few words. He needs someone else to speak. Song Tingfeng took a deep breath. He cupped his hands and said, Lord Wei, we arrived on time for the assembly, but Zhu Yinluo deliberately provoked us. He assaulted my men. When Su Qian was raiding the house, Zhu forced the three of us to stay in the front hall, barring us from entering. A higher-ranking officer can crush those beneath him. We had no choice but to comply, until the cries of the female family members echoed from the backyard. Su Qian couldn't hold back and charged in. He drove off the other constables, but Zhu Yinluo was beyond his control. Zhu knowingly broke the law, refusing to relent. Instead, he dragged the women into the courtyard, intending to humiliate them publicly, all to provoke. Zhu Yang narrowed his eyes. Framing a superior is also a capital offense. Song Tingfeng gritted his teeth. He declared loudly, I witnessed it myself. Every constable present saw it. Wei Yuan said calmly, speak the truth. I guarantee your safety. Reassured, the constables murmured. Su Qian and his men were not late. Another added, Song Tingfeng's account is accurate. Zhu Yinluo did drag the women into the courtyard, threatening to disgrace them before us all. He repeatedly taunted Su Qian. Wei Yuan remarked, this is why multiple testimonies are valuable. Had the constables all been Zhu's subordinates, their stories would align to frame Su Qian. Zhu Yang scoffed. Even so, punishment should come from the judiciary, not a lowly constable. He shifted the blame deftly, regardless of the cause. When does a constable have the authority to judge? Moreover, mistreating prisoners' families is a minor offense. At worst, a demotion or dismissal. Now, this spectacle has drawn the entire watch's attention. Do you truly believe Wei Yuan would favor a mere constable, even if two golden gongs once saw potential in him? Wei Yuan interjected coldly. Zhu Changzhu, those who defy the law will face its consequences. No exceptions. The air thickened with tension as the crowd watched silently. Zhu Yang's face darkened. The trial had only just begun. Effective immediately, you are dismissed from duty, permanently barred from reappointment. Zhu Yang's face twisted with fury. Wei Yuan continued, Constable Su Qian, for assaulting a silver gong and inflicting grave harm, crime most severe. You are hereby imprisoned. In 7 days, you will be executed by waist cutting at the market square. Hearing this, Zhu Yang closed his eyes and fell silent. Su Qian stepped forward. Lord Wei. Under the crowd's gaze, he demanded, I devote body and soul to justice, seeking no gain for myself. Were those words sincere? As he spoke, Su Qian stared unflinchingly into Wei Yuan's eyes. Wei Yuan smiled. They were. Su Qian nodded. He scanned the crowd, pausing on Song Tingfeng and Zhu Guangxiao's anguished faces, as if offering an explanation to those who cared. Straightening his back, he declared, Eyes see clearly, ears discern truth, intentions withstand heaven's scrutiny. Those words were also my truth. After the crowd dispersed, Nangong Chinro asked, Father, will you truly execute him? Wei Yuan countered, was my judgment unfair? I once said he's a born warrior, driven by rare righteousness. Wei Yuan's smile held admiration and deep satisfaction. To cripple a silver gong like Lien Shanjing so soon after reaching elsewhere, Song Tingfeng and Zhu Guangxiao trudged gloomily behind Li Yuchen. Li Yuchen sighed. Drink with me. I know you two sneak drinks during night shifts. Song Tingfeng hesitated, then relented. Fine. Li Yuchen was known as rigid and stubborn. Friends called him rule-bound. Detractors mocked his inflexibility, yet none in the watch truly scorned him. Instead, all held quiet respect, even if unspoken. Such was the weight of integrity. Li Yuchen's rigidity manifested in every aspect. He never drank during night shifts, but tonight he drank steadily, bowl after bowl in silence. The jar emptied quickly. Finally, Li Yuchen slurred. I understand Lord Wei's predicament. Su Qian did cross the line. So what if he humiliated a criminal's family? Was it worth dying over? That fool nearly hacked a silver gong to death. He slammed the table. I thought I was stubborn, but this idiot outdid me. Should have never taken him in. Song Tingfeng muttered. What now? Even with his talent. The whole watch is watching. Can Lord Wei openly show favoritism? His authority would crumble. Li Yuchen laughed bitterly. Now look, one dismissed, one executed. The watch will toe the line for years. Su Qian's death won't be in vain. He threw his bowl at Song Tingfeng. Useless thing. Even the blue and white patterns crooked. The three drank in heavy silence. Eventually, Song and Zhu left wordlessly. Alone in the spring breeze hall, Li Yuchen sat weeping. Then, resolute, he removed his badge and sword, stripped off his night watcher uniform, and walked out clutching them. A growing crowd trailed him. Toward the Hall of Justice, whispers rippled through the constables. Li Yuchen's resigning? Madness over a rookie? He ignored them all. At the hall's steps, he knelt and announced, Li Yuchen, sworn in the 20th year of Yuanjing's reign, humbly submits his resignation. The crowd froze. A silver gong stepped forward. Think carefully, Li. This isn't just your career. Li Yuchen cut him off. I upheld every rule. But today, the watch lost its soul. Fulfill duties with utmost dedication, holding the conviction to eradicate corruption, and dedicating myself to serving the nation. For 16 years, I've worked diligently, never neglected my duties, nor broke the law, never accepted bribes, never oppressed the innocent. I believed my devotion would bring enduring justice. Yet through these 16 years, I've witnessed countless colleagues exploit the people, extorting businesses, frequent property seizures under pretext of justice, not to mention 2 financial officers raping officials' female relatives. This crosses all bounds of tolerance. Without lawfulness in our hearts, how enforce justice? Ourselves corrupt, extorting businesses, confiscating homes under pretext of refuge, refrain from mentioning financial crimes, and officials violated women. A scholar's endurance has its limits. How enforce laws with corrupted heart? How bear witness? At these words, he flung his uniform to the ground, then roared, Today I, Li Yuchen, will endure no more. Thus I resign and depart. If denied, Lord Wei may execute me. With these final words, he publicly shamed Haogi Tower. The wronged Li Yuchen turned and left. Dozens of night watchmen stood motionless. None intervened. In night watchman's prison, Su Qian's 3rd imprisonment, former police officer, now frequent jailbird. Ilu Academy scholars might protest, but they lack influence. Commoners' appearance won't help, nor brute force. This is night watchman's domain. Tianjin astrologers might try saving me, unless Jianjing intervenes. Otherwise I'm doomed. But for the mighty Jianzhong, my status is insufficient. Su Qian, oh Su Qian, you savored warmth in Fuxiang's arms. Forgot society's coldness? 2 months without betting Chu Kaiwei. Earthbook fragment confiscated. Else ID contact number 1 for rescue. Would his status suffice? Drifting into troubled sleep, training hall of the night watchman's office. 2 young people sat here. Nangong Qianro loathed this scholar's attitude. From the moment he entered the office, to now, he had held his head high, looking down on others with his nose, just like the scholars of Yunlu Academy and the white-robed 4 heavenly swordsmen. Their arrogance was infuriating. Nangong Qianro sneered. You pompous dandy. Su Xinyan glanced at her, replying coolly, Women and petty men are hard to please. Nangong Qianro snapped. Who are you calling a woman? Su Xinyan clasped his hands. My apologies for the offense. Might I ask the lady's name? At that moment, Nangong Qianro contemplated murder. Su Qian arrived just in time to witness this scene. Internally, he broke into a cold sweat for his little brother. Siijio, this great beauty, is a high-ranking martial artist. You're just an 8th-rank scholar. Learn to bend when you must. Nangong Qianro turned and stormed off. You have only the time it takes an incense stick to burn. Su Qian asked, Siijio, why are you here? Shouldn't you be studying at the academy? Su Xinyan released a heavy breath. Last night, one of your colleagues came to the house with news about what happened to you. Father rushed out of the capital overnight to Yanlu Academy to inform me. I brought a handwritten letter from my teacher and used my status as a provincial scholar to gain permission to visit you here. The whole family is worried. Mother didn't sleep a wink last night. Lin Yin is anxious too. She only had a bowl of porridge this morning. Su Qian was moved. It must have been hard for her. Su Xinyan continued. My teacher advised me to plead with the princess. She might be able to save you. As for my teacher and the others, Wei Yuan and the academy have a strained relationship. Su Qian hesitated. Cigio, don't you resent me, big brother? Su Xinyan said solemnly. Big brother, your skills are lacking. You couldn't even finish off that bastard. Su Qian laughed loudly. Now that's the spirit of a true scholar. His laughter faded into silence. After a long pause, Su Qian murmured. I'm sorry. Su Xinyan sighed. I'll get you out of here. Su Qian nodded, pretending he wasn't moved. Since you're here, help me with one thing. Cigio, did you bring silver? Su Xinyan nodded silently. No words needed. Su Qian said gravely. Find you too. Tell him you're retrieving an item of mine. If he's still there, it's a small jade mirror. Take the mirror to the Yangsheng Temple in the East City. Find a monk and tell him, number 3 is trapped in the Night Watchman's dungeon, requesting aid. Su Qian believed the clever number 1 would understand the message from the Earthbook chat group. In the capital, only number 1 had the power, and number 1 owed him a debt. He also tasked Su Erlang to retrieve the mirror fragments, as a test of Wei Yuan's intentions, whether the man truly sought his death. Not long after, Yu Tu accepted Su Xinyan's 30 taels, and led him to a storage room. Su Xinyan rummaged briefly, unearthing a palm-sized mirror. In the palace's Lanyue Hall, a maid ushered Su Xinyan inside. Su Xinyan clasped his hands. This humble scholar of Yunlu Academy, Su Xinyan, greets Her Highness the Princess. The princess smiled faintly. Cigio, what brings you to seek an audience? She recognized him. Their paths had crossed at Yunlu Academy, though only briefly. It wasn't until her agents investigated Su Qian that Su Xinyan's name left an impression. When she addressed him as Cigio, Su Xinyan froze. The princess remembered his courtesy name. He hadn't expected that. But he had never formally interacted with the princess. Su Xinyan steadied his composure. Your Highness, my cousin Su Qian faces grave peril. I implore you to intervene. He recounted the events in detail. Finishing, Su Xinyan bowed deeply. Though my cousin acted rashly, his heart was pure. Had he not stepped in, that innocent child would have suffered. Zhu Yinluo's crimes remain unresolved, prioritizing power over justice. My cousin is no scholar, but his integrity shames even the learned. Su Xinyan cited classics to sway her, hoping to stir the princess's empathy. She too was a scholar at heart, but the princess remained silent, her aloof expression unreadable. Su Xinyan prepared his final gambit. He withdrew a letter signed by 3 great Confucian scholars, and the jade mirror slipped out with it. After presenting the letter, he calmly retrieved the mirror. The princess scanned the letter, replying coolly, this matter is noted, but the night watchman answers solely to His Majesty. I can only attempt persuasion. Su Xinyan inhaled deeply. This humble one thanks your highness. A maid escorted him out. Returning, the princess ordered, send envoys to the night watchman's office. Investigate Su Qian's clash with Yin Luo of Juqing Prefecture. Leaving the palace, Su Xinyan rode slowly toward the outer city. He couldn't rely solely on the princess. Her commitment was uncertain. Father had gone to the Directorate of Astronomy. Perhaps the scholars there could devise a way to save Big Brother. I must pass the spring imperial exams. I need more power, or I'll achieve nothing. Reaching the eastern city at dusk, he passed residents clad in ragged winter clothes. A gaunt-faced child, Xue Shou, in tattered garments, stared hollowly from the roadside. Summoning his courage, he stepped forward. Sir, please spare some money. I haven't eaten for 7 days. Su Xinyan instinctively wanted to mock him. If you really haven't eaten for 7 days, you'd be dead by now. But seeing the man's condition, he swallowed his words. He took a small piece of broken silver from his coin pouch and tossed it over. The eyes of the surrounding commoners suddenly lit up, flickering with greed and desire. Some 7 or 8 children followed suit, swarming around Su Xinyan's horse. Sir, spare some silver. I haven't eaten for 10 days. They crowded around his horse, clearly implying they wouldn't let him pass without payment. Su Xinyan's gaze turned sharp. He intoned firmly silence. The clamor stopped at once. Everyone fell silent on instinct, and fearfully backed away a few steps. A Confucian scholar at the 8th rank of self-cultivation can regulate others' words and deeds. Having mastered the power of words becoming law, even basic use of it is no small matter. Thus, Su Xinyan arrived at the Yangsheng Hall. He asked if there was a monk inside. An older woman named Li Yuan answered, You mean Master Heng Yuan? He left about 2 days ago, said he got news of his younger disciple, and would be away for a few days. Su Xinyan left the Yangsheng Hall in disappointment, departing the eastern city. In the moon-gazing hall of the imperial city, the eldest princess asked, "Does Su Qian normally hold a grudge against Zhuyin Luo?" The captain of the guards knelt, cupped his hands and replied, "Your servant investigated this matter. They apparently have never met, but that Yin Luo did privately express jealousy, envy, and loathing towards Su Qian of the Tong Luo." The eldest princess then asked, "What about the city lord's family? Were they implicated?" Storming into the Jiafangxi, the guard captain answered, "They were not. I inquired about it. When they were assembling, Su Qian of the Tong Luo wasn't late, but he was beaten by Zhu Chengzhu. That shows he was deliberately stirring up trouble. All these years, the Night Watchers, they really have repeatedly humiliated the female relatives of criminal officials. Some of them were even supposed to be, but there were those who should never have been implicated, yet still fell into their clutches. Such cases were all too common, and no one was willing to speak up for the families of convicted officials. That was that. I also found out that Zhuyin Luo intended to force Su Qian to make a move, and he succeeded." The eldest princess commented softly, "I just never expected a mere Tong Luo to unleash such formidable power." "I see. You may withdraw." Late at night, the moon cast its cold, clear glow, and the still surface of Sangbo Lake reflected his figure. A delicately cut paper figurine, only palm-sized, floated on the wind, drifting down onto the high platform in the center of the lake. After a few seconds of stillness, it wobbled to its feet, took a few tiny steps to the temple gate, and squeezed through a crack in the door. Moments later, a faint light shone through the gap. Then with a boom like thunderclap, fierce flames engulfed the Yangzhen Shanha temple. The explosion echoed for hundreds of miles. Emperor Yuanjing jolted awake from his sleep. He had been cultivating the Tao in seclusion for over 20 years. Though an emperor, his bedchamber had become off-limits to the imperial concubines. Naturally, they resented his dedication to cultivation, but Emperor Yuanjing ignored their complaints. Being an emperor with many offspring, concubines were dispensable. After the ancestral sacrifice ceremony, Emperor Yuanjing had felt uneasy. He told Chen Shangdao to prepare the carriage for Lingbao Temple, planning to cultivate in peace under the national preceptor. Just as master and servant reached the palace gates, they heard a clear, resonant toll echo through the night sky, spreading across every corner of the city. The palace went on high alert. Emperor Yuanjing frowned and saw a squad of imperial guards charging toward him in alarm. Their leader shouted anxiously, "Your Majesty, there's been an explosion at Sangbo. The Yangzhen Shanha temple is destroyed, and all 300 imperial guards stationed there perished. No one survived." Emperor Yuanjing froze in place. After a long silence, he said in a low voice, "Notify Wei Yuan to bring his men to the palace at once. Summon the national preceptor here to bear witness, and inform the grand astrologer. Tell him the Yangzhen Shanha temple has been destroyed." The first to arrive was the female national preceptor. She soared through the air on a 7-star sword. She was a woman of indiscernible age, strikingly beautiful, with an ethereal bearing, possessing both the fair, tender skin of a maiden and the alluring charm of a mature woman. Emperor Yuanjing opened his mouth, then sighed. "National preceptor, the thing beneath Sangbo has emerged." The female national preceptor folded her hands respectfully, her voice crisp and clear. "This poor Taoist is already aware.